I'm looking forward to the day when we feel that we're ready for a crusade against Russia as a unified Europe.
For every single problem that we have, taxation is the solution. That's it.
It's getting more brutal.
Basically, this is what they did. It was a regime change in the US.
All right, let's start. And I think we should start with the comments section this time, because our last episode, the first episode of the year, has gotten, again, quite an impressive, at least for me. We have 14 comments. So for me, that's impressive. I'm really, really grateful for people to engage in our discussion. Antonios, which comment do you think should we start with?
I mean, let's take it from the beginning. The EU needs a unifying force, like a crusade of sorts. Maybe they can unite over the Islamic takeover of their countries, like in the medieval times, from Go Fish 73, 88. I mean,
Yeah, that's
let's
a very
go
European
back.
spirit.
Let's go back into the future. I mean, the history repeats itself as a farce. And speaking about crusades right now is just a farcical comment. And I think that it was a lighthearted comment.
I mean,
We
it
don't
was,
even need that.
If you translate the language of crusade the same way that some translate the meaning of colonialism into tech colonialism, that is right now being implemented by the tech giants, it's a form of colonialism, then maybe there is also a new meaning to the word of crusade. Maybe it's a cultural crusade. Maybe it's a economical crusade. I mean, we would have to ask what the comment actually meant by saying that.
There is an implicit, of course, we could ask, but there is an implicit assumption there. Well, there are many assumptions. The first one is that we are threatened by the Muslim countries. I don't believe that we are threatened by the Muslim countries per se. The second assumption is that there is, first of all, a unifying force, because back then in the Crusades, there was a unifying force, at least there was a common civilization built around Christianity. Does that exist today? I'm not sure. I mean, in practice, in theory, yes, absolutely. I've told you before that we have a common civilization, whether some people like it or not. But is that strong enough to unite it at this very moment? I don't know the answer to that. And then the third assumption is that we are strong enough to do something like this. Whether it is, interpreted, as you said, differently, culturally or economically or whatever, I don't believe that we have that power anymore, the relative power. Or at least we may have the potential, but we don't have the practical power to express it and project it to the world. And the sad reality is that in many respects, the future world, Go Fish wants us to go back in the past, but the future world is taking place, or it's being built right now in a faster way in those Muslim countries. If you look at the technological development of the Emirates or Saudi Arabia, especially in cutting-edge technology like artificial intelligence, data, and so on and so forth, is faster than Europe. And every single person that has been there, the speed of construction, for example, or the magnitude of construction is much bigger there. And people have found different ways of living without the traditional policy methods of the West, of Europe, let's say, taxation, prohibition, everything. So I don't believe that we are in that position, and I'm not sure about all the underlying assumptions of that comment, but I will keep, and I will end with this, I will keep the sense of insecurity and the sense of the perception of threat, which there, I won't disagree with the comment at all.
Just one more point from my side, because what I see in this comment is the need for a unifying force. It says it exactly in the first line, like crusades of sorts. So the unifying force is definitely something that people of Europe need.
Exactly.
We feel that we are fragmented, divided, poorly governed, and losing the competition against other players on the global chessboard.
Exactly. You're absolutely right.
Key message of this comment, I would say, that Europe needs a unifying force, not unifying in terms of federalizing Europe. I don't think this is what the comment means. A unifying force in the sense of a vision of how we can grow out stronger from this crisis that we're in right now.
At the very least, yes, a common understanding of where we want to go, for sure. But this discussion between us for this comment also points to the next comment, which comes from Antoni 9284. What the EU needs is a complete reorientation of political alignment, not federalization. Centralizing EU power will only make their problems worse. Again, we are faced with the dilemma that we discussed in the previous episode, whether federation is impossible or absolutely necessary. And maybe in political terms, it's difficult and it looks impossible. Everything looks impossible until it's done. But in economic terms and in terms of the new configuration of the international system and the threats that we are perceiving, I think it's absolutely necessary. The numbers do not lie. Even if we have a political alignment, which is by itself extremely difficult to achieve when you think about 27 different countries with 27 different election times, periods, 27 different political systems. Some of them have coalition governments, others do not. Some of them have a stable political system, others do not have a stable political system, and they are very used in going into elections every 1, 2, 3 years. It depends. So even the political alignment looks impossible right now. And it's not something that you can just choose to have. You just have to rely on the political dynamics all over the continent. Whereas federalization is a choice. It also needs some political circumstances, for sure, but it's what you said, the agreed perception or the agreed vision for the future. With this comment, I will disagree on the first part, but I will agree on the second part. Centralizing EU power will only make our problems worse if we don't have common perceptions about the threats and a common vision about the future. What do we want to do? Where do we want to go with Europe?
Let me offer a slightly different perspective on the problem, because I'm not so sure that starting the discussion with do we need to federalize, centralize, or anything like that is the right point. Because if you ask anyone who's happy with identifying as a Pole, a German, Greek, and so on, everyone will say, I feel this is risky. What we should be starting from, and then let's see where this leads us, is to discuss how, as a continent, as a community of countries, we should take more responsibility, because this is the real issue. We have been so comfortable relying on the US in terms of security, trade, our economy. We have been seeing growth that is now slowing down. Crises are coming in from all possible directions, and the need for more European responsibility is still a debate. For example, in terms of security, does it need to be a European structure, or should we fix NATO? If you look at what has been discussed in the Munich Security Conference, I don't think that there is a clear path forward. And also seeing what has been said in the recent EU Council and in the European Industry Summit, we might end up discussing a Europe of two speeds again.
Yeah, then necessarily we are going to have to discuss it, and in the process of discussing it, in order to find this alignment or in order to agree on the common vision, there will be ideas on
Exactly,
the table.
because I mean, what I want to finish with, you can't have a perfect solution. There is never a perfect solution. So people have to have the opportunity to understand what's at stake.
Yeah, we don't even need perfect solutions. There are no perfect solutions. We're not expecting anything of the sort. We're just looking at something that works, something that is effective, something that solves more problems than it creates. At least, well, let's look at the positive side. At least we agree on the diagnosis of the problem. That is something that we don't have to take that for granted. I mean, we agree, we feel it. It's not even, you don't even have to ask any kind of expert or any kind of leader on the EU level or the national level. We more or less agree that we do have a problem. We feel insecure. We feel like the future is not going to be better. We feel like we don't have the prosperity needed to create a family or to start a business. We feel insecurity in terms of the economy and in terms of the geopolitical environment, because all of a sudden everybody turns against us, and we feel this sentiment of solitude or geopolitical loneliness that, we're not in good terms with Russia, we're not in good terms with Turkey, we're not in good terms with the Muslim world or Africa, not even the United States. So it doesn't take an expert to realize that we have these kind of problems. We don't even feel safe at home. And that's super important for people. So at least we have that. And this is setting us up for the future. We have to go through various discussions, even brainstorming. So if you have ideas on what we should do as Europeans, feel free to comment. But I will keep, again, the most positive thing that you said, that we have to take our responsibility. We have to claim our responsibility. And this will also give meaning to our life, exactly, and our position in the world as well. Exactly as you said, we were so used to Americans providing security for us through NATO or unilaterally. We were so used to, speaking only about the environment and saving the planet, the Europeans saving the planet, because we were relying on cheap oil imports from Russia. We were always talking about values without having to defend those values abroad. And values are only effective when you have the means to protect, defend, and project those values. So this whole discussion that was triggered because of Trump, because of the invasion of Ukraine, because of the insecurity that we feel at home, at least points us to the right direction. And that direction is claiming our responsibility.
But look how much interesting things can come out of a simple comment like this, because this is the true challenge that we're facing. And particularly it is crucial because not of the understanding of the problem, but because of the lack of actions. We will today discuss the Industrial Summit, where more or less things have been repeated. The diagnosis that was announced, discussed, it's more or less the same stuff that has been discussed in 2024 in the summit, in 2025. We showed this many times with our analysis and research regarding the Draghi Observatory and Implementation Index. So this is not new. But what is new is that the language of the debate is getting, maybe you agree with me on that, but I think it's getting more brutal. It's getting more, there is more feeling of urgency. And that leads to actually a feeling that unity within Europe is not guaranteed, because some countries some leaders are saying things need to get done. Some
Unity
are
in
not
Europe
ready.
was never guaranteed. The least unified
Now it's
region
becoming more
in the
clear.
world. Becoming more clear again because of the threats. So it's, again, this is the
Shouldn't
positive
threats
thing.
unify people around common
It always happens.
security
It always
goal?
happens like this. It always happens like this. You don't have an in-group unless you have an external threat, an external shock that makes you feel closer to the people you have next to you. That's how it works always. And this is the discussion about how will humans feel in the future if there is an alien invasion. Obviously, the external threat always creates a sense of unity within the in-group. It essentially creates the in-group. And I think that this is what is happening. I believe this is what is happening. And, looking at the next comment, the comment section is my absolute favorite in this show. Seeing how well Europe has unified over the Ukraine war, good luck with federation. I mean, the logic of the comment is correct, but I have some technical objections. And those objections are that despite all the trouble and despite all the discussions and the committee meetings and the council meetings and the parliament resolutions, despite all that, Europe was quite unified over the Ukraine war, and it shows with the consistent support that Europe has provided, to the extent that to matching the capacity that Europe had to provide this support. And so even with all the objections coming from Hungary or Slovakia or I don't know where, there was a consistent support over the last 3 years in Ukraine. And it's exactly because of the fact that the Russian invasion feels like an external threat that makes us all look at each other as one, as we are in this together, because someone else is coming to invade. And this invasion is not happening somewhere far away. It's happening right in our neighborhood, at our doorstep.
But Antonios, looking at how Europe unified over the support for Ukraine, comparing this to any past initiatives, single market, migration, wherever you look, there is no unity. And I would say that the way we reacted, and we keep reacting, we keep learning the lesson that the case of Russia's aggression on Ukraine teaches us. I would say this is the way, the best example of unification so far. So I don't agree with what the comment says, because nothing brings us closer to a federation than what's happening in Ukraine.
Yeah, and the policy domain that had the most progress in terms of very slowly and incrementally moving towards a federation was actually defense, because of the realization that we don't have the capacity even. And to link this back to the previous comment, speaking about crusades, we cannot even defend ourselves from Russia, not even start a campaign somewhere else. So that's why I don't technically agree with the comment or the comment below from Isabel that it's an idiotic idea. It's actually the only solution.
I'm looking forward to the day when we feel that we're ready for a crusade against Russia as a unified Europe. I'm looking forward
No, I'm not looking forward to that at all. We need to find a way to coexist, because Russia is not going anywhere. But we have to do that from a position of power and not from the position of the invaded region.
That's why we need to be ready and capable to launch a devastating crusade that we will, of course, never do unless provoked. But coming from a country that has a very substantial amount of experiences with Russia as a neighbor, I say that we have to have that mindset that if attacked, we would just be ready to take them down without any problem.
Look, I don't want to disappoint you, but you're not saying anything new or anything brilliant. It's called deterrence. I mean, the first thing that the Russians had to examine and analyze was our capacity to react. And that was very close to zero. In the beginning, it showed. And therefore, they took that decision. The Russians are not stupid. Putin is not crazy. The whole regime there is very, very stable. The first analysis was that we won't react. We cannot react. We don't have the capacity, the military capability or the defense capacity to do that. And therefore, they took the decision to invade. And it's deterrence. It works like that. If you are not strong enough, the chances are that in the long term, you are going to be invaded or lose your interest or your capacity to project your own values on the world. That's the way the world works. It's not even a pessimistic view of the world. It's just pragmatic and realist. And when we say that we have to build up our defenses and our military capabilities, it's exactly for this reason. It's not because we want Europe to play a global role and start invading countries again or start colonizing the world again. It's just for us to feel safe and able to protect our values, our civilization, and our way of living. This is it. There's nothing new to this. It's common sense and it's absolutely innocent in
yes, but
every respect.
it is common sense that we kind of lost over the past years. But next comment.
Well, we changed the subject, but it's from Evangelos. I was impressed from the cynical comment about the pensions.
That was mine.
We could discuss how AI could fund the pension system, tax the robots and AI rather than focusing on births or migration. We have 2026 tools. Don't think like 1950. Okay, first of all, I have to make this comment. There is a prevailing philosophy in Europe, at least, that for every single problem that we have, taxation is the solution. That's it.
I mean,
it's always,
we even have a full episode about it, about the new taxes that are being now debated in Brussels.
It's a reflex. It's a reflex in Europe. It's a slip twitch. You know, we have a problem. Tax everything. Someone needs to be taxed to solve the problem. It's always like this. Makes me furious. Sorry, Evagil. Now, if I go into the substance of the comment about the pensions, I'm sorry, I didn't make the decisions. I didn't create the security and the pension systems, the social security models. I didn't create those, but someone needs to tell you the truth. And the truth is that that model doesn't look sustainable. And everybody agrees again on the problem. Both the left and the right, they have different solutions, absolutely, but that's where they agree that the social security, the pension system is not viable. What does the left say? Look at Spain, for example, recently. We need more people to fund the pension system. So, okay, let's casually make 500,000 people Spanish citizens and European citizens, by the way. And then the right says something else. Oh, we don't have money, so we have to cut everyone. And both of them agree that we have to tax everything. So I'm just telling you the reality as it is. If we ever have pensions, our generations, the millennials, if we ever have pensions, they're going to be very, very insignificant, and it's not going to be the future that you imagined or the future that you've seen with our parents. So we have to act now. And I'm willing to agree. I'm willing to even discuss something about taxing the new technologies. Absolutely. But it's more important to see how these new technologies, if we unleash them, can create more prosperity and more wealth that will eventually feed into the pension system. One thing is for sure, if we don't do anything, or if we just go with what the left and the right is telling us, this is not sustainable, this is not viable. I'm with you on thinking with new tools, 21st century tools are not like 1950s, but sorry to tell you that the pension system is also 1950s and 1850s. It's not, maybe it's not 21st century. It's not something that I like or that I want to do. It's something that I'm observing, simply.
So I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on pensions. I just have my observations. Like I said in the previous episode, there are many places around the world where there is no pension system. And in those regions, first of all, the demographic crisis is non-existent because people treat their family as a way to build security. Probably our comfort of living and comfort of getting old and dependent within a system that takes care of you is a significant reason for our demographic crisis right now. But one thing I think I do understand is that whatever we do, one thing that could help solve the crisis, I mean, every problem is easier solved with the availability of money. And what will give us more money is a growing economy.
Innovation, industry.
Innovation.
Exactly.
And the part of this debate then should be, I mean, in this, anything you mentioned, Antonios, right now, the actions of the Spanish government, the response of the right is treating this problem as a standalone issue, which limits the discussion to the amount of the workforce. Do we have enough workforce or do we not have enough workforce? But what if, and this is actually something the comment also suggests, we have 2026. Let's think like 2026, not 1950.
Yeah, it works. That
Well,
argument works
we can
both ways.
innovate
Exactly what I said.
ourselves out of these problems.
Just to give you a small trivia, the Social Security system, the pension system, was created in the 19th century by Bismarck in Germany. So it was not something that always existed. The Social Security system,
and I think it
pensions,
was mainly for, if I'm not mistaken, for military personnel coming back from the service, no?
I'm not absolutely sure, but it
I'm also
makes
not
sense.
sure, but it's something, I mean, we would have to check that, but probably.
Yeah, but it makes sense. It must have started from somewhere, you know. But this is a 19th century tool, by the way. So that argument goes both ways. Maybe we are allowed to build enough wealth during our lifetimes, our vital years, you know, the phase. We are allowed from the state to create enough wealth for our pension instead of that money, that wealth taken from us to be invested by someone else. You know, we can discuss that. Or maybe it is optional. Why not? Okay. So
Well, maybe there should be a law. What is the biggest problem of societies is that people have absolutely no clue how economy works, how money works. People don't know how to handle money, how to save. Maybe the future means that there will be some mechanism that will force people to actually save the money they make in a more innovative way than the pension system, which is just not sustainable.
yeah, but the moment you open up that discussion, you cannot limit then afterwards to the way you want to think. Okay, if we agree on the diagnosis of the problem, once again, that this thing is not viable and we don't like the various solutions that are put forward, and you want to open it up and say, no, we need new taxes, we need robots to be working instead of us, whatever. So you want to be creative and innovative and create a new policy, then you cannot limit this. Then you can be at least intellectually fair and say, okay, since we are proposing new things right now, we have to listen to what the other people also have to want to put on the table. So let's discuss all this if we open the discussion, but then don't limit the solutions to only those that fit your ideological standards.
I'm really impressed by how much content of our podcast the comments can give us. We're 30 minutes into the recording and we're still discussing the comments.
That's why I said it's my favorite part of the show.
If
for
you're
sure.
still with us, if you didn't turn off by now and you have some ideas or even critique to share, please do it now. We will take it on in the next episode.
Absolutely. Thank you
And
very
don't
much
go easy on us.
for the comments.
We like to be challenged. So shall we talk about what happened in the last days? Because we had a number of high-level meetings and EU leaders again repeating the same calls for action that we heard 2025. I almost felt watching the Competitiveness Summit, I almost felt like EU leaders announcing they discovered the competitiveness crisis, which we know has been there for a while now. And I welcome the change that certain sensitive issues are now given a priority in or strength of
Yeah.
a more brutal choice of words even to say how urgent they are. I mean, made in Europe, so the being preferential about procurement, the capital markets union, and so on and so forth. There are a number of topics, the single market, and number of topics the EU has failed to agree on until now, has failed to act upon. Our Draghi Observatory, which alarmed everyone in September that only 11% of the Draghi recommendations are being implemented. Just now, you have been in Boston in the Harvard University presenting the newest numbers. By January 2026, we only have 15% of recommendations implemented. So this is basically too slow, and this is not how we will save Europe. Now, to finish my long thoughts, what I think is very interesting is the concept of sort of going back to we always had 2 or even 3-speed Europe, but now really going back to a 2-speed Europe if we don't reach consensus on what needs to be done by June, right? That's what Macron said, I think.
Well, to start with the Draghi Observatory and the implementation index, to give the numbers, it went up 4 percentage points from 11% to 15%, roughly, which is nothing, awe-inspiring, but at least there is some progress. And there is progress in crucial policy domains like defense and the capital markets union. So the interpretation of the results is that eternal question of whether the glass is half empty or half full. You can keep some positives from the progress of the past 5 months. You can also focus on the negatives. In any case, nobody's expecting the Draghi report to be implemented 100%. This is never going to happen. This is not the end goal. But as much as possible to agree on the diagnosis of the problem and to push the whole system into reforming in ways that will make things a little bit better. And this incremental way of policymaking, of reforms, is the European way. This is not a bug in the system. It's just a feature of the system. We have to accept it. Things will take more time. And all these meetings and all these high-level summits and so on, they are part of the system as well. It's a feature of the system. I don't necessarily expect any dramatic policy changes, shifts into the decision or changes in the decisions. But every time it helps, it works, We meet again. There was, apart from the third Antwerp summit, industrial summit, there was the EU Council, there was the Munich Security Conference. And in all these events and meetings can be seen as nudges, a little bit of small pushes. Don't forget.
Wait, so what you're saying is you think we're moving fast enough?
No, I don't think we're moving fast enough, but we have to, and we don't have to be satisfied with the rate of the reforms, but we have to acknowledge that there is progress in a very complicated policymaking and political ecosystem.
Well, okay.
We have to push.
I get the point, but if you look at where the discussion is going, the industry is not happy. I'm not sure about voter approach right now across Europe, but looking at the political debates,
I'm trying to, as always, to try to focus on the positives, because there is an effort, and you can see that the industry might not be satisfied with that, but there's definitely an effort. Simplification, for example. There's a very wide consensus that we need simplification of rules, less reporting, less responsibilities for small and medium enterprises, for bigger corporations. We need scale. We need to be able to scale all the innovative technologies that are created in Europe, because don't forget, we have theoretical innovation in Europe. We have plenty of patents. We have plenty of new companies. Our problem is mainly that these small startups do not scale enough to produce strong global players. And so they have to move to the US, most likely, in order to receive more funding, in order to be able to scale, and so on and so forth.
yes.
So there is a wide consensus on this.
And also you can add that the process of making law in the EU that has been taking 5-7 years on regular basis now is becoming faster, more robust. It's a good thing. But on the other hand, I understand the viewpoint of the industry and of some political leaders that the window to take leadership in the revolution, it's an industrial revolution we're going through with AI and robotics and everything, quantum computing coming up, and so on and so forth. So the window of opportunity will not be open forever. And that's why we have this urgency, which is because we are talking about the nuances. But if you look at the process as an outsider who's not following every step within the Brussels bubble political debate, you will see that we are only rising the urgency of the language. We're using stronger words each summit, but it's not translating into actions.
Look, let me interrupt you. I will focus on something that you said, that we're losing the race of the new industrial revolution. The problem in Europe is that we're also losing the old industrial revolution retroactively. Keep this.
Very good point.
What I'm saying. We're losing the previous industrial revolution because our industrial base that was built in the process of a very tough process. The industrial revolution was not an easy process. A very tough process that built a very strong industrial base in Europe is completely reversed. We're losing the traditional the traditional fundamental industry sectors right now. We're losing chemicals, we're losing aluminum, we're losing steel, all the energy-intensive industries, all the foundational sectors of the manufacturing economy of the industry. We're losing that. And we're talking about what? Competing on AI? That's, I'm sorry, but this is hypocritical. Let's just secure that we're not going to be hollowed out, that we're not going to be a complete service-based economy without any capacity to produce and manufacture. And so we have to depend on everybody else. And then we can talk about participating in the race for the new technologies, the Industrial Revolution 2.0. That's the sad reality. I'm sorry. And some people...
Yes, and that sad reality is even making the argument of some EU leaders for a smaller group of countries moving ahead with reforms and just leaving those who are not who don't want to participate behind. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is quite a big risk if that starts happening.
It happened before. It happened with the Schengen zone. It happened with the Euro zone. Some countries decided to have common currency. The others opted out. So opting out is not, again, nothing new. And again, it's not, we have to understand, or we have to appreciate that it's not a bug in the system, but a feature of the European system currently.
Oh, maybe I haven't looked at it that way. Maybe this is a good thing. So even if we don't have unanimity, if not everyone agrees, there is a small group that can move forward and the entire continent will benefit from that. That some countries, the leaders, the first movers, will deliver the needed innovation and change.
Yeah, but FOMO, my friend, FOMO, fear of missing out. So if the other countries see that this is moving forward at a pace that is going to be beneficial, they will eventually join. But here's the hard lesson from the past. That's how the Eurozone started. And what the other countries need to see is that the common currency in this case is actually beneficial for the member state. And therefore, they will ask to join, and they will take the necessary steps, make the necessary reforms in order to join that zone, the Eurozone in this case. It's going to be working in the same way with everything that is going to be created within this logic or context of 2 or 3 speed Europe. If that thing that those 5 countries, 6 countries, 7, 8 countries are going to create actually delivers results, then the rest are going to want to join in fear of missing out. But if it's not working, then what do we have again? Nothing. We just have fragmentation. So no idea is by default bad. That's where I'm going with this. The multi-speed Europe, it's not by default bad. It used to be taboo. Oh no, we don't want to do that. We're all in this together. Solidarity and convergence and so on. But if it's not working, then we have to try new things. And we should never be afraid to try new things, because I'm not going even very much into the past. Only the past 60, 70 years, we have been able to reinvent ourselves as Europe. I think we discussed it in some other episode as well. We went through various transformations, the coal and steel community, the European economic communities, the European communities, EU. Maybe we have to go somewhere else. And now maybe we have to reinvent ourselves and, create something that will deliver all the things we're looking for. Again, security, prosperity, safety. You never know. So I don't see it as necessarily bad, but I don't see it as necessarily good either. It's a mechanism, it's a tool, it can work or it cannot work. It's always dependent on the decisions and the policy choices.
I like that. That's constructive summary of the topic, because it shows that moving forward is the best thing to happen here. And clearly we can see what's happening. Like you said about the possible implementation of the Draghi recommendations, it's a snowball effect. Way law is made in Europe is also reinventing itself, not on the procedural level, but on the speed level. So maybe this is the snowball effect that we're not yet seeing so good because it's the early moments, but soon it will start accelerating. I mean, at least this is something that we should be expecting.
The way I see it, to finish this on a lighthearted note, the way I see it, we're all of us together, gathered, and there is a piano falling from the balcony upstairs. And it's falling on our heads, and we can see it. And everybody looks up and says, there's a piano that's going to land on our heads. And we agree. We know there is impending doom. It's in the numbers. It's the laws of physics, It's falling because of gravity. It's going to hit us. And then at the moment, we are just trying to figure out, are we going to go left, right? Are we going to go forward, backward? What's the correct path here? But definitely we have to move.
Exactly. That's
so let's move first. Let's move, and then we
can see what's next. Okay, I think this is a good summary of our today's episode. You have anything else we should discuss, or we can wrap it up?
We can finish with Munich conference, I think.
Of course. I mean, yes.
It links back to some of the comments, so I don't know what order you're going to decide to do it. Maybe you finish with this.
What I liked about Munich is that clearly we have power to be the center stage. That's also something that is often not mentioned in the discussion. Where do those most important debates happen? Everyone is following. What will Europe do? Will Europe survive? Will Europe do something that the US is expecting? Or will Europe move more towards China and other partnerships? This shows that we're not a lost continent yet. We are at the center stage, and we just need to reinvent how we direct the scenario that is playing.
I'm not sure we are the center stage anymore, unfortunately, but there is also the power of tradition. So if you have this forum for discussion that gathers all the highest level of speakers, and that's where countries or regions communicate some of their strategies and goals for the coming year, and it's taken place for decades. I mean, there's a power of tradition there. Even if you're not set the stage, someone was going to come.
Like Davos or the Munich Security Conference that is taking place outside of Europe.
I'm sure there's plenty of them. There are
I'm
plenty
sure
of them.
There is something happening in Asia, but in the so-called Western world, which is also some definition that is out of date by now, probably, I think we are the center stage.
Well, let's not linger on our disagreement there. The fact that so many leaders around the world came to Europe again, to communicate their goals, their strategies in relation to the current situations and circumstances, it's a small win, and I'm going to take it.
So how do you read the change of narrative from our American friends? Because
there was no change of narrative. That's what people don't get. It was just a change of the aesthetics. Last year, the vice president came and said that the vice president of the US came and said that you are in civilizational decline. Where are those common values that you speak of? I don't believe that we have shared values and so on. How can we be allies, and how can we deal with our common threats if we don't agree on the fundamentals, on the basics? It was very tough. Rubio said this time the same things, more or less, that the West is in decline. We don't want to be managers just managing it. The US doesn't want to be a manager of this Western civilizational decline. The narrative, the grand strategies has not changed. And how can it? They have it printed. In contrast to us, they do have a strategy. It's printed. It's all there for everyone to see. It's public. So everybody knows. It was just that this time Rubio came to Munich saying, we need Europe. We want to be partners in this. We want to be allies. Let's see how we can work together. So the diagnosis, again, was the same, but this time the language used and the aesthetics as well, was different. And that's why Rubio, basically saying the same things that Vance said last year, came off the stage, on a standing ovation. Because it's very familiar for Europeans to say, we have problems, we may not agree on everything, but, we are together in this. We're partners. Let's see how we can work together.
Yeah, but this shows that maybe the American leadership learned a lesson that if they want to remain their influence on their European partners, there needs to be a change of how they package their messages. Because something that stood out for me was President Vance was referring to Europe as you versus we. Secretary Rubio, on the other hand, used the word we. He spoke about we. We are one team. This was new. I haven't heard that much of this in the communication from American leaders in the past. But there is another sign that the American government is noticing that there may be some new approach needed, because by continuing to be so, we use that word already on the podcast, they act as a bully. And among American podcasts, Europe and European economy is the running joke. And fair, they are right to call us out for everything that we do wrong, but that doesn't help in building a feeling of partnership.
Whatever works, man. I really don't care. Whatever works in moving us forward, in making some progress in our unity, in our ability to act, is welcome. Whether it is the Trump-style shock or the Rubio-style, friendly attack, it's okay for me. That's where I'm different from other people.
I agree, but what I was referring to is, for example, I think it was either Reuters or Financial Times that had this article saying that the American government wants to sponsor MAGA-friendly think tanks across Europe, and that this is the symbol of the growing influence of the American narrative, of the MAGA narrative in Europe. I consider this as a symptom of a problem with the MAGA narrative, because if they want to pour money into something, that means they are not happy with the results. That means they see that even the pro-American parties, the pro-American think tank, are shifting into discussing, okay, how to make Europe more independent and strong, and how to be less dependent on anyone, including the US.
But one does not exclude the other. The Americans have been in Europe for many, many decades. Nobody was complaining at that moment. For decades, nobody was complaining. Everybody was like, of course. Then Trump administration comes, and basically this is what they did. It was a regime change in the US. And so they said, we are going to destroy completely the apparatus the mechanisms of funding because we cannot control them, and they are funding entities that are not ideologically aligned with us. It's a perfectly valid policy for a new administration that is so wildly different from the previous one. And what they're doing now, effectively, especially if the rumors that this is going to be a State Department initiative are true, what they're doing now, they are establishing a new mechanism and a new apparatus and a new ecosystem with new players. So the policy of intervening in the European public sphere does not change. And I'm sorry to say this because it's so hypocritical. The United States, ever since the end of the Second World War, have been omnipresent in European integration, in European public sphere. They've always been there. They were welcome. They were always welcome from the Europeans. Starting with the Marshall Plan onwards, the American money, of course, and the American defense was always welcome until 2025. Then all of a sudden, why are you intervening with our politics? You know, I understand there's a logic in this because now we don't agree with you. We don't agree with your current ideological direction, so we don't want you to intervene. Yeah, but that doesn't change the fact that it is hypocritical. So it's always been like this.
The issue that also needs to be mentioned here is that the current leadership of the European institutions is not agreeing with that, but the number of political powers that are very much agreeing with the American narrative is growing. And therefore, we may end up in a political reality within a few years where everything that the, let's say, MAGA-friendly think tanks are saying will be the mainstream narrative in Brussels.
Yeah, it can be. It is a possibility. And then we will forget everything about the cultural wars that some people have invented. All of a sudden, we are so different from the Americans that we're talking about a cultural war. No, it's not a cultural war. It is a regime change or an effort to change the regime, the political establishment, the predominant ideology of the European elites. That is definitely true, you know, and I'm looking at it completely detached as an observer. That is, I believe that is the end game for the Americans, absolutely. But let's not play the theater here that this is the first time that this is happening and we don't like it because we want and value our independence. You know, let's be honest, at least between us. This is the way it's always been with Europe and the US. In fact, and I'll finish with that, in fact, the American factor was the only consistent and major and consistent political force underlying European integration. I don't want to go too far in saying that the Americans pushed us to integrate and to start working with each other because they needed to build up a continent that was utterly destroyed by the Second World War in order to defend against the Soviet Union. But I mean, this is pretty much how it happened. They were actively pushing, forcing, asking the Europeans to integrate. So let's not turn our back to history because it just doesn't fit, again, our small ideological boxes. And this is what I'm getting from the Munich Security Conference strictly from a European point of view. I don't know how many people notice that or how many people emphasize that, but I was actually, for the first time in, 6 years, happy with the European President of the Commission, because she went there and said something that is by now should be common sense, that we have to be able to defend ourselves. That is a very rare confession from the European Union. This, to preempt your objection or your framing of this, it's not an either or kind of situation. It's not like it's either European or NATO that provides security on the continent. It can be both. Nobody's saying that we have to kick out the Americans completely, but we have to be able to provide security to our people. And then the Americans can also help, of course. They also have their interests, and we have this long-standing traditional alliance between us, and there is so much infrastructure when we're looking at NATO that doesn't have to go to waste. But first and foremost, we have to be able to protect our people. That's the basis.
Again, we're talking about the snowball effect. What I found very interesting is to see the reactions to the speech of Senator Rubio. For example, on X, there was a viral article posted by Ray Dalio, billionaire investor who comments on geopolitics recently a lot. And he wrote an article explaining why it's breaking news right now that it has been said in the Munich Security Conference that the world order that we have been living in is over.
Under destruction. Great
As you
name,
already
by the way.
said, is nothing new because the message about this has been clear, at least from the American government, for at least the last year, if not for the last decade.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing new. So maybe the question I would like to close with, or open rather, maybe our viewers will have some views on that to share. How many times again we will have to hear that the world order we've been living in is over until we start just treat this as a done discussion and start talking only about the new world order and how to best organize ourselves within it.
And even more important, as an extension to that question, what would a new order look like and why? So maybe we can leave that as an invitation for more comments. Please, everyone. It's my favorite part of the show. So thank you very much again for your attention and your participation, and hope to see you again next time.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.